sincere pleasure to welcome our speaker today, Mr. Robert Stevens. He is, as you know, the founder of Geek Squad. But as you may or may not know, his company was bought out by Best Buy, and he was then the CTO of Best Buy for 10 years. So I'm going to let him delve into his story, but please help me welcome Robert Stevens to our house today.
Hey, hi everybody. Well, I came because I was invited, and I really mean it. I think I've been giving talks for Geek Squad turned 20 years old this summer, and I started Geek Squad on a college campus in University of Minnesota. I was an undergrad, and I was working in a research lab because back then in 1994, the only place you could get high-speed broadband was on university campuses. And so I got a job that paid literally, it was like $4 an hour. And they knew that people like me would take that job at $4 an hour because I was really doing it for the internet access and literally eating ramen noodle 5 times a day. It was a lot of fun because that was the same year Mark Andreessen, he's my age and he was at the University of Illinois at Champaign-Banana, the supercomputing lab there, and did Mosaic, which became Netscape. So the web browser really just turned 20 years old. And Linus Torvalds, who created Linux, was at Helsinki. And the lab I was in, we were one of the first, 50 or 60 people to compile Linux on a 286 processor. I mean, it was so fun because so many things were going on. It's not unlike now where I'm 45, so I was born in 69. I'm not saying I'm like part of the greatest generation, but let's just list the facts here. 69, 2 key things happened. Of course, we landed on the moon. Anybody see Interstellar yet? Yeah. What do you think? Thumbs up or thumbs down? My daughter, who's not into sci-fi at all, she just got her driver's license 3 hours ago. Said it was probably the greatest movie she'd ever seen, which I've been trying to get her into Star Wars for so long. So that was a little victory. And the first packet of what would become the internet was sent in the fall of '69. 2 years later, Intel comes up with the first processor, and also Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory came out. And for my money, if you really want to study entrepreneurship, that movie has it all. It is a complete manual for how to be a CEO. That's what the movie's about. It's about brand and product development, intellectual property protection, talent acquisition. And the guy goes to a foreign land to get the Oompa Loompas. He even wears a uniform at work. He creates his own evil twin enemy to help ferret out the truth. And at the end of the day, he realizes you can't hire for certain things. When you really want magic in a company, you have to give the entire factory away to the person that deserves it. And that was Charlie. And I was 5 when I saw that, and ever since, I've been looking for that golden ticket. Like, who does not want to run the Chocolate Factory? Then a couple years later, in 1977, Star Wars comes out for the first time. Not saying I'm the greatest generation, but we were like episode 4, first season, about another person who, lives in a desert and ends up taking on the entire empire, which is kind of a recurring theme. If you think about the people at NASA that put people on the moon, and then you get Luke Skywalker, and then we got cable TV and the first video game system and the first personal computers built by people in their garages. And so, but you couldn't run a business with a computer back then. So when I saw I got my first PC, it was a VIC-20. And I thought it was the greatest thing. I thought that was the best time to be alive, was the 80s. Because, we had nuclear war and AIDS, but we also had punk rock and personal computers. And the computers couldn't talk to each other. And then a couple years later, I go to college, 1990. And the 90s were really about the beginning of the internet. And finally, computers could talk to each other. It's the power of the network. But the computers were all tethered to the wall. And then 10 years ago, we get social networking. It's not about the computers talking to each other. It's about the people talking to each other. But now you've got this in your pocket. You can run a business from anywhere. In some ways, you have it easier and you have it harder than everybody. You have it easier in that you have no excuse to be entrepreneurs. And not everybody's cut out to run their own business. But the barriers and the complexity and the tools you have to do now are so much easier. I don't really Geek Squad. I wouldn't start Geek Squad today. I mean, the reason I sold it is because I knew the cloud and mobile was coming. There's no moving parts in the iPad. I mean, Geek Squad wouldn't be anywhere if it wasn't for Microsoft because their shit never works. Okay, so I'm just gonna run you through just give you a little context. For me, hi, good. How are you? There's a chair right over there. So this is the first thing. This is actually my business card. I never got a Best Buy business card because their cards are ugly. I mean, their logo's a price tag, and they don't even have the lowest prices. So, and for me, Twitter is just amazing. It's like it is the Telegraph, and it's CB radio, because you don't need anybody's password or account to see what anybody's doing. That's Twitter's big problem. Most people don't realize you don't have to tweet. You don't have to share anything. You can just follow writers and your favorite authors and directors and artists and whatever. So this is actually my business card. And it's also a wonderful litmus test because when I give it to people, I get 1 or 2 looks. One look is, and that tells me everything I need to know about that person. Like they're looking for the .com or whatever. And I'm like, just type these characters into Google and my office number will pop up because it's a Google Voice number so I can give it out to anybody. And then the people who do know it understand, and that's helpful. That comes in handy when you're hiring people later. So when I was on the campus of the University of Minnesota, I did not want to get into computer repair. Like, I'm going to college and, I didn't want to end up in a state fairground computer swap meet 4 years later selling used hard drives. Computer repair is like the bottom of the IT chain, a few steps up from plumbing. And that was what I was going to call but to keep my job in the lab, I thought if I could learn how these supercomputers work and the web works, just in case I don't have enough money to stay in college, I'll never have to worry about a job. And so, but to keep that job, I had to make extra money to pay rent. And so I decided on my bicycle on campus to just offer to fix PCs. I could fix anything, TVs, dryers, anything. And so I was going to call it Technomedic. This is the first mistake everybody makes in business. They're so afraid that no one's going to get the plot of their movie that they have to spoon feed. You ever watch a preview and you feel like you've seen the entire movie? You're like, I just saw the whole movie. Like, I have zero interest in seeing that now. And what is the director really saying? He's like, I'm not confident in myself or the storyline or the character universe. I didn't even create a character universe. I didn't even think that hard. I spent all my money on special effects and none on good writing. It's exactly the same. Your ability to judge a movie and a preview and anything you're passionate about, it's that gut instinct that is as good as Richard Branson, who I actually don't think is super great if you actually look at how much money he's actually made or not. It's that gut instinct. So before I went to the University of Minnesota, I went to the Art Institute, and that's only because in high school I took some computer classes, but the computer classes were too hard back then because programming was all like assembly code. And so my senior year in high school, I followed this pretty girl down the hall in the art class. And I'm like, there are a lot more girls in art than there are computers. And so I went to the Art Institute of Chicago for 2 years on a scholarship, probably because of how I wore my hair. And then I realized I don't want to be a starving artist. So that's when I went to the University of Minnesota. And why did I go to Minnesota from Chicago? Because Chicago was way too much fun and hard to focus on school. And so my friend convinced me that it was a frozen Siberia out there. Minnesota is a great place to start a company because it's the Russia of America. While we're all warm and comfortable and happy here, like it was 17 below this morning in Minnesota, and that induces a level of struggle in people that hardifies them. So the first mistake people make is that they just jump into whatever they're going to do, and they don't really think about creating a universe as rich as Star Wars. Did any of you see the new Star Wars trailer? I've seen it like 50 times already. And then I made my kids watch it. My wife rolled her eyes a few times. But then I said the best part of the Star Wars trailer wasn't the trailer. It was the chatter over the weekend. Did you see any of the things that people have already been doing? That there was the trailer, and then people were analyzing the new lightsaber. Have you heard about the new lightsaber? It's got 2 little beams that shoot out, and nerds everywhere were arguing over whether or not that was And people were quoting obscure Star Wars wiki articles from 15 years ago saying in the Corinthian universe that dilithium crystal actually could generate that beam and it's okay for the Jedi. But like, and they're arguing about shit that's totally fictional. That's the dream of every company, is that people talk about your brand and your product as if it was like a George Lucas product. And look at this. And George Lucas himself came back and made episode 1, 2, and 3, which were horrible. And if any of you have not seen that, it's because your parents or your uncles that are nerds didn't want you to see it. But that universe is so strong that people are believing again. Even oldies like me are like, oh my God, maybe Star Wars could actually be great again. That's the goal of really every company. And I don't care whether you're a locksmith in Berkeley or you deliver pizzas. In fact, I would argue the more boring a business is, the greater the opportunity there is to differentiate. The reason I dropped out of art school is because it was intimidating as hell. Every day I went to school there and they were creative and brilliant and beautiful and interesting. And I'm a middle class kid that I wasn't a jock. I wasn't a total nerd. I was kind of like, I hung around with everybody. And it was very intimidating. And I thought, I really don't want to suffer from my art. Don't want to smell bad. So not sure I'm really going to make it as an artist. And I'm really good at business. I'm really good at solving problems and creating systems. But I really wish I was a bohemian, but I'm not. So I left. So I don't really kind of fit in anywhere. But what was the point of that? The point was that if you go into businesses that look sexy or interesting, all the smart, beautiful people go into that business, like music or fashion or film. But the world is populated mainly by boring ass, ugly, humdrum businesses that have no competition, no sophistication, no design sense, no humanities background, no love of the arts, no character universes. So what if you took the ideas that you see like in a Star Wars universe? Anybody hear about the Tarantino? Ever see anybody fans of Quentin Tarantino? And there are people who actually have mapped that he has subtle references that Pulp Fiction and Reservoir Dogs actually take place in like a Tarantino parallel universe where there are references to the movies within each other. What does that have to do with the individual plot of each film? I don't know. But what I do know is that people, the more shit is made in factories far away, the more people crave story and passion. They want to know a company has a point of view. And the more boring your business is, landscaping, whatever, gravel, pit digging, I mean, you can do both. There's what you charge, but then there's how you do your business. Anyway, the best thing ever to happen to me is I had no money when I started my company. I did this for a few months in '94, and I was like, people keep thinking I fix medical devices. And two, it's a really bad logo. It's just bad. He has a wrench in his left hand and like a red cross, get it? I'm a man, it's really, really bad. This is what 99.9% of all businesses do. So in terms of like entrepreneurship, I mean, whatever it is you're going to do, a product or service, you got to give it a name and you have to stand out. But I'm going to argue that this universe doesn't exist just for the cosmetic layer that the public sees. I think the most important aspect you'll do really is the systems you build for the employees, the culture. I heard a phrase that culture is what happens when the CEO's out of the room or the leaders are out of the room. I absolutely believe that. Or, what do they say? Culture eats strategy for breakfast. So that's why I'm spending a lot of time like on this. So I knew it was bad. I listened to my gut. And that's another thing I did take from art school is that, you wrote that paper. I'm like a total procrastinator and I do my best work at 4 a.m. on the day something to do. I would get comments from teachers saying, you're so economical with your language. You really got to the point fast. So, but you know it when you've nailed a paper where you've done a project and you're like, I know this is an A, like this, I just nailed it. And then you know when you've compromised. And that is so important to develop in everybody has it. It's like a muscle. And it's so important to listen to that because each of you has great taste at something. And that's usually the key. If you think about it, there are themes that go back to childhood, what you love to play, what the kind of stuff you made, what you got energy from, what classes you're taking now. There's a theme there. And the more you listen to that, the better you get at tuning that note. And then you can hear that note and you can sometimes see what other people can't see. And I saw that and I'm like, this is shit. This is like horrible. I'm like going to be a total loser in 10 years. Number one, it's just me on a bike. And every time I show up, people are freaking out because the last guy didn't show up. So I need to like lie about that. I need to make people think there's like a freaking army here. Just like when you see in the Verizon commercials, they got helicopters and like thousands of people. It's the power of the network. And because that's what we want. I want 5 bars wherever I go. Should I switch to T-Mobile? You all been anybody thinking about switching to T-Mobile but didn't? Because people are like, the signal kind of sucks in some places, you know? So anyway, I decided to change the name, and everybody told me no one is going to take you seriously with a name like Geek Squad. And I was like, I don't care. That's such a cool name. I could turn it into a comic book and it would still work. You know, like this is the Delta Force I've always wanted since I was a kid. I was one of my own Justice League. Okay, there's Batman and Aquaman, and they had Hawkman and Superman, and it also is kind of based on the people I saw in the research lab where I worked, where these nerds in the lab could build any circuit and write any software. And, you know, thinking back to NASA and landing on the moon, these are just a bunch of geeks who could do anything. And geeks don't give a crap about status or power or popularity. They just see problems and they're like, what is the most efficient way to solve it? But then there's the power of the squad, you know, the power of the group and the network. So once I had the name, I was like, this is way better. And I based the logo on old gas station logos. Like in America, they used to call them service stations, where people come out and check your air pressure. Because gas was so cheap, they could afford to like throw in all this other stuff. This is long, long gone. But that image still lives in the American. There's a lot of myths that live in the American, and each country has its own set of myths that live on. And you see it in advertising, whether it's Chevy, like pickup trucks driving over giant boulders. Like there's like this male fantasy that might do that one day with my truck. It'll never happen. And so I didn't want a logo that looked high tech. My customers are low tech. They hate computers. They hate their computer. They're ready to throw it out the window. Nobody will listen to them. Every person that shows up makes them feel stupid, talks down to them, doesn't tell them what they did, and charges them a lot more than they thought they were going to pay. And I thought, if I just show up and I'm nice and I fix it, that's 99% of it. And then if I happen to dress nice, that's even better. And so, but I only did this because I really wanted to create a software programming consultancy, like a McKinsey or an Accenture. But I didn't have any money to pay salaries. So I needed to start at like a fast food business to one day have enough money to pay salaries. My idea was to hire college students in between classes who could solve computer problems for people on campus. And that was kind of how the idea was born. And when I said like the best thing ever happened is that I had no money when I started my company. I had no money for advertising. So when it came time to like get rid of my bicycle and I had to drive a little farther to make house calls, I thought, I need a car. I don't want too much business. It's still just me. So I can't have a phone number on the car. Because this is like when the first internet websites were doing e-commerce during the Super Bowl and their websites were crashing. Best Buy's website just crashed on like Black Friday, for like 6 hours. That was hilarious. It was like you had one job, one day. This is in Best Buy's lobby. Before I left, I parked this in their lobby. Now they just can't get it out of there because but this is the first Geekmobile. It's a 1958 Simca Aronde 1300 Elise. It's a French car. Built outside of Paris, and it was like your Chrysler, and it was a Chrysler import. Simca never made it in America, But I saw this car in a lot one day at this little antique car shop. I was looking for like my Batmobile, you know, and I saw this thing and I thought, this is so badass. And just like the French culture, it has 7 ashtrays and no seatbelts. So it was not having money that forced me to pick a name that would kind of stand out in the yellow pages before there was like Google and Yahoo. And we pass each other on the freeway all the time, but we don't know it because everybody's driving the same damn cars. So if you just look at most commercial vehicles, they're boring as hell. Why can't it be exciting? In fact, again, I would argue the more boring your business, like computer repair, have fun with it, because humor, there's different types of humor. Humor is not just slapstick. With Geek's what I call comedy with a straight face. The name's humorous. But Geek is funny, but Squad is kind of serious, like Bomb Squad and Police Squad. I mean, literally people are freaking out when we're calling. PhD, we've saved more PhD theses in America than anybody from the lost Microsoft dustbin of the deleted items folder. Humor is a way that a brand can communicate confidence in itself. If you can make fun of yourself, and humor can disarm people and let people relax. Man, it's okay. First of all, I'm gonna take care of this. This is gonna be fun. Not only am I gonna solve this problem, you're gonna learn something. I'm gonna ask you any question you want. I'm gonna show you how I did it, and I'm gonna show you how to prevent it so you don't have to call me back out here for this problem. And I'm gonna guarantee this problem for 3 months. Like, if this shit comes back, I own it. You're not paying for my time. You're paying for the 1,000 Saturday nights I stayed at home alone, not kissing girls to learn how to do this. Because what a brand really needs to do is transmit authenticity as short and as quickly as possible, but also be memorable. And most business is now more than ever is word of mouth, and it always was. 95% is word of mouth. So people remember this kind of stuff, but if you don't show up on time and you're not nice and you don't really do a really good job, this is all fluff and crap. But after a while, as you grow it, it's no longer like a joke. Now it is an army of the world's largest purchaser of black Volkswagen Beetles. And when the closest plant is in Mexico City, and when they stop making Beetles, literally, I think they're just going to buy the factory and just keep stamping them out. And it's not about gimmicks. The Beetle actually is the cheapest car in its class, fuel efficient, and it's also one of the safest cars, so it lowers the insurance rating. So I'm not just here to tell you, be interesting and goofy. It's like, no, you have to do both. You have to do the form and the function. You've got to solve all the business problems. It's like I wanted to go to Best Buy. I knew they were going to be number one. I knew they were going to beat Circuit City and all the other chains because their stores were cleaner and brighter and they were more fun. They did their own advertising, so they're a lot like me in that it was a lot of DIY culture. And they also happen to be based in Minnesota, which is kind of a lucky accident. But I wasn't ready for them, so I didn't go to them in 95 or 96. I waited 6 years. I never raised any venture capital. I don't know anything about venture capital. I'm kind of scared to death of it because I would go talk to founders when I was ready to. This is the mid-90s, the first internet boom, when any idiot could get kind of like now, any idiot could get $1 million for an app. And that's dangerous because it corrupts people into thinking that they're better than that they are. And I can tell you, it was really kind of depressing watching these people who I didn't think were smarter than I was raise a lot more money. And I'm like, should I raise money? Maybe I should. But there's trade-offs that you have. This business is profitable, but it's not a Google. It's not going to grow to 1 billion users overnight. It relies on people to show up and dress nice and shower more than once a week. That's really, really hard. There's no other Geek Squads still 20 years later because it's a really, really hard business. So I waited 6 years because it was my first business and I wasn't looking to flip it. I mean, this is like, my baby. So I had my eye on Best Buy. I knew I could go to them, but my systems weren't ready. I hadn't figured out my dispatch algorithms efficiently enough and the utilization rate of the employees. It's almost exactly like Uber, which we can talk a lot about that because that's probably the biggest business opportunity in the next 20 years is dynamic dispatch of excess capacity in real time and the whole pricing and stuff. If you watch what's happening with Uber and Airbnb and the sharing economy and the on-demand economy, which is leading to fractional employment and the growth of the 1099 independent contractor, super interesting, but a little disturbing stuff coming down the road for employment. So I watched a lot of TV when I grew up, and this for me was the real Batman. And that's really what I wanted to do in terms of drawing on it. Another problem with art is that it felt like everything had been done. Why would I stay in art school if everything's already been done? And so how do you contribute something new to the world? I mean, but the answer is if you combine two or more things that have already been done from disparate sources, then you create something new. And that's the key to innovation. And so I sort of was, I sort of want to apply like a kind of a superhero thing, kind of Men in Black. And then that's actually Adam West, the guy that played Batman when we acquired Geek Squad. When we acquired Best Buy, I hired Adam West to fly out and be like the MC for the ceremony. I didn't make him wear a Batman uniform. He was like 80 years old, so I made him wear a tuxedo. So, does anybody know who this is? It's Fabio. How do you know who Fabio is? So, it's hard to describe who Fabio is. Fabio is like, he's a model, and he starred on the covers of all these romance pulp novels, and he's been in like a butter commercial, and he's like perfect for the BuzzFeed Reddit era. I guess you could he'd probably be a meme today, but he was like a meme before memes were memes on the internet. So we're opening up a 700,000 square foot laptop repair facility for Geek Squad that like is at the end of a UPS runway. So whenever you return a laptop to Best Buy, they get put on a plane and flown to Louisville, Kentucky, where UPS's hub is. And literally a couple hundred yards from the UPS planes, they go right into this gigantic building called Geek Squad City. It's a building no one will ever see. It has no windows, but it's entirely orange inside. And there are 900 Geek Squad agents, all wearing clip-on ties and white shirts, and no one will ever see them. And I argued with Best Buy for 3 months when we were designing it. And they're like, I'm like, so we're going to paint the entire building orange on the inside, right? And they're like, why? I'm like, because that's our logo's color. And we're going to have them all in uniform, right? Well, why would we have them in uniform? No one's ever going to see them. I'm like, that's why we're going to do it. Just like Charlie in the Chocolate Factory. Willy Wonka wouldn't let the Oompa Loompas wear T-shirts and shorts because no one saw them. And, they say ethics is how you behave when no one's looking, People's property are coming to the building. You treat those employees differently than the ones driving around the phone geek mobiles. Then you kind of have this class thing going on. And so I'm like, we need to hire a celebrity to officiate the opening of this facility. And they're like, what? I'm like, yeah, let's call William. They're like, well, how much do you need for this? I'm like, I bet we can get somebody for $5,000. They're like, you're not going to get anybody. I called William Morris in Los Angeles and said, I need a list of all your celebrities that will make appearances. Fly to Louisville. We'll put them up in a hotel. My budget is $5,000. And I got a list of the most interesting people, some of which you'd recognize. Isaac from the Love Boat, 1970s TV series. I mean, people have name. If you ever watch VH1, there are people have name recognition, but don't cost a lot. I call it my has-been strategy. So Fabio, I saw his name on there. I'm like, that's it. So I hired Fabio. What is the point of this? Is that when you make up your own rules for what marketing means, then you can set your own prices. I heard this great story. Alex Bogusky, who founded one of the most successful ad agencies of all time called Crispin Porter Bogusky, who did stuff for Burger King and all sorts of other anti-smoking ads. Really famous dude. And he told me this story that like Virgin Atlantic, when they were launching their upper class suite in New York and London, Heathrow, they wanted to market this to business travelers. How do we reach a business traveler? And somebody had the idea saying, let's make a fake adult film. And we're going to call it Sweet and Innocent, as in upper class suite, SUITE. and it was a 5-minute film, but they said, you know, in those hotel rooms when you go in, there's that company LodgeNet, and they're the ones that play that annoying looping movie system in all the hotels in the world. That's based in North Dakota. And they called up this little tiny company, LodgeNet, and said, hey, you guys are the ones that power all the hotel rooms, right? We want to put our movie in your system so people can watch it. They're like, okay, what section? The adult film section. Okay. And why? Well, because we want to advertise this, and so we're disguising it as a porn film, but it's going to show up as free. So when they see $9.99, $9.99, they can see it says free, called Sweet and Innocent. And they watch it, and it was like this fake porn music, and it was just basically an infomercial ad for this beautiful upper-class lounge with this porny voice that's talking. It was really cheesy. It was like an SNL spoof. But it was hilarious, and they didn't pay really anything to put it in the system. Well, how much did their sales go up? I don't know. But there's two things I like about that story. One is that they created their own channel of distribution. If you do billboards, if you do ads on the buses, you may as well line up with all the other cattle, and you're going to pay the retail price that everybody else to pay, and the price is going to go up the more people that are in line. But if you invent entirely new ways to reach people creatively, the customers appreciate it, right? I mean, we all know those ads that we go, okay, that was clever. Like, you ever have an ad where you're like, oh, you guys got to watch this one? Because we know the companies put some effort into it. Like in the Super Bowl, I could care less about the football game, but I love watching the Super Bowl. I love seeing what $1 million every 10 seconds looks like. So you have to do the unconventional. The other reason I like it is because not that everything floats right down to the bottom line, but when you do crazy shit like that, like I said, I want a black helicopter and I want Geek Squad agents rappelling out of it, like on the streets of Louisville. And this is actually Harrison Ford's private stunt pilot and his helicopter that we rented. And I had magnets made to put on the side of the helicopter. Why? Because it was a stupid laptop repair facility, like any other Amazon distribution center that opens up every day in America. Nobody talks about it. But there's like 900 employees. I want these people to be motivated, and I want to give them the experience of a lifetime. And it just so happens that 60 Minutes was in town and covered this because they were doing a story on tech support and technology difficulty, and ended up making the whole segment from 60 Minutes about Geek Squad, and you can see it online. And so, but it also set the tone for the culture. If you want people to take chances in your company, they have to see the leadership sticking their necks out and having fun, not taking themselves too seriously, so that people feel safe to ask questions, challenge norms. And this is the way you do it. You got the CEO's got to be out there on the dance floor making an idiot, not an idiot, but having fun. And it all ties into the mission. There's brand reinforcement here because the joke was. So here's the funny thing. So Steve Croft of 60 Minutes is following us around in there, and we have a soldering training station there where we train Geek Squad agents on how to do perfect laptop repair solders. And so Fabio walks up, who has this super thick Italian accent. And I got to know him over 12 hours, and he's actually incredibly highly intelligent. He built his own amplifiers at home. His father invented some of the world's most advanced automated conveyor belt technology in Italy or whatever. So the Geek Squad agent's like, oh, Mr. Fabio, would you like to learn how to solder? He's like, oh, yeah, sure, I'll give it a shot. And he proceeds to solder better than a Foxconn employee in an iPhone production line. Anyway. Okay, so let's see. What do we get? 20 minutes left? Okay. When I said before about the most important thing, this is something that's not getting a lot of attention. But I began to worry, okay, Geek Squad agencies see them in Best Buy stores, and they're the experts. But what about all those people wearing the blue shirts at Best Buy? Their reputation is kind of like they're idiots and they don't really know anything, which is unfortunately probably true. But it's not that people are idiots. It's just that nobody can know everything at the pace of all the stuff that comes out. So how do you solve that problem? How do you solve the training problem? With Geek Squad, people say, where'd you find your people? They'd see the Geek mobiles. And the uniforms, I mean, there are a lot of IT people who are like, I'm not wearing a freaking clip-on tie and a short-sleeve white button-down shirt. I'll get my ass kicked on the street. And that ended up becoming a really good litmus test for humility. I don't want somebody who's arrogant in your house. I want somebody who's like nice, who's not like a creepy nerd, just like somebody who, like, if you're home alone during the day and you let strangers into your home, you look at that guy and be like, I could kick his ass, so I'm not worried about being alone with him in my house, you know? But also make people feel comfortable, not feeling dumb and saying, I don't know the answer to this. And because when somebody looks like that, you know, it's easy to feel superior to them. But what about these people, you know? That was an interesting challenge for Best Buy. And if you think about it, retail, people want to know, is Amazon going to kill physical retail? When Expedia and book your own airfares came out, 20 years ago, everybody thought it was going to kill the travel agent. It didn't kill the travel agent. It just killed the mediocre travel agents. Travel agents had to adapt. There's wedding tourism, ecotourism, people specialize in archaeological tourism. I mean, those travel agents do great. And so Amazon's not going to kill physical retail. They're just going to kill mediocre retailers. One of the ways that I tried to help Best Buy was like with Twitter and saying, what if you could just detect a disturbance in the force, to use a Star Wars-ism? What if while a customer was in the store, you could detect that they were unhappy? Maybe starting by listening on Twitter, because now tweets tend to be geolocated, or on Facebook, and use social media to reach out and talk to customers. And we were doing this before Comcast. But even bigger was, what if the employees could talk to each other? Somebody in Best Buy knows the answer to your question, but probably not the person standing in front of you. So the biggest mistake that retailers make is that you just get the answer, I don't know. That's what's going to kill Best Buy. Is you walk in there and like, hey, I want to hook my doorbell up to my iPhone. So when I'm playing like video games, it pauses the TV, and then I can like send people away that are trying to sell me shit at the door, but let the pizza guy in. How do I do that? Like, you should be able to walk into any Best Buy and just dream shit up like that. Like, how do I hook my Xbox up to my toaster? And you should never get the answer no, right? Does Google ever say sorry? I mean, they hardly ever give you 0 search results. They're always trying to throw something at you. And they're analyzing every failed search result. Every time you don't click on the first one, they call that a failure. And that's really what retail is. It's a search problem. You're arranging the products on the shelves. So these people are like human search engines. And yet they don't let them bring their own personal devices to work. So the last thing I did before I left there is I got them their own private Wi-Fi network. They still can't use their personal devices, but they can use tablets and stuff like that. But if I were to start Best Buy today, I wouldn't hire any experts. I'd hire really friendly people who don't know anything. Because if somebody knows something, then they have an opinion. Oh, you don't want a Mac, you want a Windows machine. You want to get a Surface thing. I want somebody who's like, depends on what you want to do. Tell me what you want to do. What do you like? Do you like to touch the screen, or do you like to use a mouse? I mean, everybody's different, and there's so many choices now. So you really don't want an expert in retail. You want somebody who's curious, and I think that's kind of like the ideal worker is somebody who's friendly, which I don't think you can train friendly. You're either friendly or you're not. You either love helping people on the floor or you don't. But we don't have to have experts anymore, because if they can just chat with each other, that's why I talked earlier about this collaboration technology. That's one of the biggest opportunities in business right now. If you haven't heard of Slack, you're going to start hearing more and more about them. Every startup is using them. Slack is basically the new Microsoft Office for startups, and it's basically chat. But it's got some really cool, employees can create their own custom chat rooms with hashtags. Because if you think about it, this employee, he might work in home theater, and she might work in mobile car audio. But he might have a customer in front of him, and the guy wants to know, hey, if I listen to music in my car, can it flow into my stereo when I get home? So these two have to collaborate. How can they talk to each other? How can they list their strengths? This person knows a lot about Sonos. This person's an expert in Xbox hacking or whatever. I mean, all these people have their hobbies and stuff, but they can't. Each store is like locked, and they can't do anything. And that's the biggest problem in business. That's one of the biggest opportunities is employee-facing systems. You're going to see a lot more of these tools. I mean, when you can walk now, use Square to pay or Apple Pay. It's like no going back. It's like the difference between boarding a plane with a paper boarding pass and boarding it with a QR code. And I think what's happening for the first time is consumers are experiencing what it's like to. Has anybody ordered like a Chipotle with the app and you just walk to the front of the line? Have you done that with any experience? Like once you do it, it works so well that you feel guilty. Like, why are you losers all standing in line? Like, why didn't you just use your app? Because I'm walking to the front of the line to get my burritos and I'm out of here. Like, once you do that, there's no going back. And for the first time, the average consumer who never knew anything before can cross-pollinate their expectations. They can now say, I know what's possible. I can track a freaking FedEx package. I can see who touched it and when and what plane it was on. And Domino's now will tell you, Jorge is making your pizza and Jim is delivering it. He's now traveling past the speed of light to get to your house, breaking all local speed laws. He's outside your door. So this idea of tracking, and yet I try to order a pizza, not Domino's, like local pizza, ordering is horseshit. So there's tons of business opportunity out there to take all these tools and apply them in almost any business. And so I don't want to waste time on this. I'd really like to just kind of get in a little Q&A. There's an article in Forbes, like 3 months before I left Best Buy, this was published in Forbes, Why did I stay at Best Buy 10 years? I mean, if I'd have moved out here in 2002, that's 2 years before Mark Zuckerberg came out here. Like if you spend time with this stuff and you follow the trends, it's really easy to see the future of what's going to happen. But I was so busy because number one, it was my first startup. I didn't want that. I had to sell it to Best Buy because I wanted to grow globally, and selling new service while you're there buying a TV is much more efficient than spending money on advertising to do it. And I've been proven right that it's so hard that there's no other Geek Squads. And most Americans couldn't name anybody else who would come to your house instead of your Wi-Fi router. And I wanted to stay to make sure they didn't screw it up. But I also went there because most founders, after they sell, leave within a year or two. If you just study the startups, or they shut down the startup, they buy it, and then like the people disappear into the company, and then you never hear from the brand. And like I spent 6 years building this thing, and like this thing could be even much bigger. And we were about to enter wearable computing, robotics, home automation. I mean, I don't know if Best Buy is going to be around in 5 years, but Geek Squad will be around at 100 because shit's always going to break. Because people like you will be inventing new stuff, and it will break, or it'll need to be upgraded, or people just won't have the time to set it up themselves. And so I stayed because most founders don't, and I wanted to learn. The people, and you'll see this a lot when you follow culture of startups, is people that start companies aren't always the ones to lead them. I mean, the Google founders brought in Eric Schmidt. People are starting to talk about whether or not Uber needs a little more adult supervision, got a little bit of a culture problem there. But a lot of people are going to turn a blind eye because they're making so much money. That's really, really dangerous. And there's no reason for Uber to have these problems. Look at all these self-inflicted wounds they're doing. Like they're sitting on a gold mine. And I just don't buy, and I hope none of you ever buy the idea that you have to like burn those bridges to hit those numbers. That's bullshit. That's just laziness. So I wanted to stay inside the big company because most founders don't. I want to find out, do I have the skills of what it takes? I mean, when you're the owner and the founder, I can tell anybody what the hell to do, and it was a lot of fun. But I thought, if I'm really good, I should be able to go from an owner to, there was 120 vice presidents when I came into Best Buy. That's humbling. But I thought, if I'm so smart, I should be able to persuade them of what the right thing is to do. And in some ways that succeeded. In other ways, I didn't succeed. Best Buy is not anywhere near where I think it could be. And I think they've really it's just not super exciting. So I wrote a memo before I don't know if I put it on here, but I just want to see. I don't know if I published it here. Well, here, I just want to share one last thing with you, and then we can kind of do any Q&A. And that is, I think the biggest trend that's going to be coming is business messaging. everybody's doing messaging for Snapchat, for consumer to friend to friend. Rah, okay, great. They can sell more ads. Like, that does not excite me. But I think the most exciting thing is when Facebook bought WeChat or WhatsApp for $19 billion, which now with the stock appreciation is like $22 billion or something like that. Somebody pointed me saying, like, in WeChat in Asia and Line, that like banks were, Jack Ma said of Alibaba, that banks are so bad in China that people they had to build their own bank to make it work in mobile. Again, this is another thing where the lack of an advantage forces a startup to create and ask whole new questions. But when they order like taxis, they order them inside the messaging app in Asia. And I think that is definitely going to be the future. That's why you're seeing Facebook Messenger split off by itself. Because the idea of having an Uber app and a Lyft app and a Domino's app and a Chipotle app, that just not feel like user-friendly deal. Most people don't even download apps. And the ones that do don't use more than 8. And if an app doesn't last, it usually gets killed within 10 days. It's super depressing. But the ability to just say, I want a pizza inside Facebook Messenger and have it begin to like figure out what your favorite pizza is. You don't have to launch another app. I mean, and collect money from friends. You're starting to see it with Snapchat and Square Cash. Watch that trend. I think that is that's a space I know 4 startups that are working on this right now. And one of them is the founder of Uber. There was a company called Talk2. I desperately tried to invest in. They're out of Boston. This is such an insane idea. And what Talk2 is that they would let you ask any question of any business listed in Yelp and just text them though. Like, think about it right now. If you look up a business in Google Maps or Yelp, the only action you can take, with the exception of restaurants and Open Table to book a reservation, is to call the business, tie up a phone line, tie up another human being, not have any record of what was said on the call. And it's like not asynchronous. It's just like, and if they call you back, like you have to be available when they want, versus how a text message works, which is, do you have this in stock? Do you have this color paint? Let me attach a photo. This is what I'm trying to look for. Can I add an extra person to my party? Do you rent for private things? Do you have this kind of special bird feed for my canary? Anything. And yet we can't chat with any business. If you try and send a text message to any phone number listed in the phone book or Google Maps, you'll get an error message. That's insane. So Talk2, what they did is, what's also insane is they set up a Philippine call center. And basically, they would just let you send a message like, what's your price for Lego Marvel superheroes from Nintendo 3DS? And if they weren't online, they would call the business for you, get the answer, and then type it. Is that scalable? No, not at all. But maybe they can get up to a hump. Well, they stopped calling me, and then sure enough, a week later, Path bought them. Do you guys know what Path is? He's like an ex-Facebook guy. He tried to be like the super designy Facebook, and it didn't really work out. But he bought Talk2. Now it's called Path Talk, and people love it. You should give it a shot. I don't know if they'll solve the problem, but they're on the right trail. The ability to not have to look up anything and you can either look up a business name or a category. Just tell me, like last night, I wanted a freaking pizza. My family was sick of turkey leftovers. They're like, we just want a pizza. Any thin crust pizza, any mediocre thing will do. If you try to order pizza from a local place, like they suck because they're all using like some third-party janky thing that only works on a desktop browser but doesn't work in Chrome, and it looks like crap on mobile or won't work on a tablet. I just look at this going, they're missing so much business. So that's a trend that is going to be, try and book a haircut. There's no Open Table for haircuts, especially for men. Like, that's insane. I look at it. I got a pretty simple, I'm a $15 haircut. Like, let me click a button. In fact, I would probably get my haircut like twice as frequently if it was just easier. So that's the good news I have for you. It's not all been done. There are a ton of areas where things you're already expert at that haven't been applied to businesses. So this is one trend. I think it's the problem is how to, at some point the businesses have to decide. You have to have people online to listen to that. So, you know that it's I hate that thing that when you call a call center, they say this call may be recorded for quality purposes. But when you can keep a chat session saved on your phone and you can add images or whatever, and like you get a copy of that. So now when you call back and you're like, so and so told me that they were going to do this, and they're like, can you tell me who you spoke to? And you're like, I didn't write it down. I'm sorry if you don't have information. Well, now we get to record these calls for quality purposes. So there's all sorts of great trends. This is the last slide I think I'm going to show you. This is my ideal job application in the future. How do you test for curiosity? Somebody comes in and wants to work at Best Buy, this is what I'd give them. Every day in every newspaper in every city in the world, a randomized open book test is generated. It's not a test of intelligence, it's a test of how good are you at search engines. And when I define search engine as not just Google, but your friends, your network, by any means necessary. So if I was CEO of Best Buy, this is what you get when you apply for a job. I'd find the San Francisco Chronicle, find the crossword for today, which I have no idea what the answers are, photocopy it, give you a pencil, and say you're free to use your mobile phone, Google, call your friends, ask any Best Buy employee. The goal is to complete this as fast as you can, because this represents the weird shit you're going to get when people walk into a Best Buy or any retail. If a retailer were just known, if you know you could go to a hardware store and you're like, anybody like grow up with a hardware store where you know you can walk in and Ernie or whoever's working there, like they will just figure it out. There's a hardware store right near me and I want to give them all my business on Union Street in San Francisco instead of going to Home Depot. And I've tried to go in there and every time it's like, no, sorry, I want to use this paint mixer with this drill, but the adapter bit, I can't find one that'll fit. No, it's not going to work. I spent 10 more minutes and I figured it out, but I was like, I'm never coming back. Like, I don't ever want to hear the words, I don't know. So that's why I think the future of the employees in the workforce aren't experts per se, but people who are like Swiss Army knives who are like, I don't know shit, but I can find the answer. I'd much rather have that person. So that's kind of my presentation. So we had 2 minutes for questions.
I just moved here from Singapore. I lived there for the past 5 years, and so much more technologically advanced than it is here. Making reservations via text and things like that as well. And you were talking about business messaging. I think the entire oil business is what keeps Yahoo in business because everybody's on Yahoo Messenger. You can't do any business without being on Yahoo Messenger in the oil business. That's not relevant at all.
That's a great article, by the way. Like you literally should write that. I love weird shit like that. Like a lot of us would have been like, Yahoo Messenger. Yeah. The oil business runs on it. Like that's super fascinating.
Well, my dad first, because he had offices in different parts of the U.S. and then international, he got everybody on ICQ. And at the time, nobody was on it. Nobody even knew what it was. But he was like, I don't want to have to pick up the phone and call you guys and find out, what the market's doing. I want to be able to send you a quick message. And I know you're online. I know you're at the desk. You should be able to answer. So he started that. And anyway, but so I wanted to ask you, because you're done with Geek Squad, what are you doing now and what's next for you?
Well, I when I left Best Buy in 2012, it happened to be the 10-year mark since I joined Best Buy. And my daughter was due to start high school, and I wanted her to grow up in a bigger city and a more diverse culture. So we moved to San Francisco because of the weather. And I lived in the Midwest 43 years, and I'm just like done with like flatness. And so I want to live in the mountains and fog and ocean. And so so I had a contract with Best Buy, and but they never called me, but they kept paying me. So I learned to surf, and I took my kids around the world. And I don't ever plan to retire, but you could say I went on a sabbatical for 2 years, and then 2 years ends in about 2 or 3 months when my non-compete expires. I'm going to start a company called Control Freak, and it's going to be like Geek Squad for home automation. I think I started another company today. I signed the paperwork. It's called Kung Fu, and it is like an HR department for the 1099 economy. I worry about the Uber drivers and the Lyft drivers. Like Geek Squad agents are all employed. They get benefits. They're well taken care of. You pay for their uniforms. I just think if it touches the customer, you have to own it. But right now, 18 million Americans get 1099 at some point, and they're saying it's going to grow to 40% of the U.S. economy in less than 8 years. I think that's great for us. Uber is getting cheaper, and so is Lyft, and the carpooling software is amazing. But I worry a little bit about vacation pay. You know, I think people should be able to take good vacations with their families and stuff, and making sure they're not overpaying for gas. So my vision for Kung Fu is to unify that workforce and go to the healthcare companies and the oil companies and say, kind of like AARP, and create sort of like a guild and say, can I negotiate a rate for all of them if they use this payment card to buy their gas? Can they get like 8 cents a gallon off? Get a discount on their car washes, their dry cleaning, go to HR Block and Intuit and say, can I get their taxes done cheaper? Can I help these people organize their receipts so they can get every deduction they're entitled to, you know? And go to Delta Dental. These people can't ask an Uber driver if they have dental insurance. They don't have any. But if there's tens of millions of them, I'd like to put together a network that gives them the buying power. Because if you're a Google employee, you get all these wonderful benefits packages. Why can't they get it? Because they're acting as an individual actor in the system, not as a group. So that's one thing I'm working on. Control Freak is, you know, if you look at PCs, then the internet, and then social network. There's about 16 sensors sensors could be used. There's a guy on the internet whose father has been missing for 48 hours, and you know, he's elderly, and he got in his car and he crossed into Arkansas, and nobody can find him. And I am interested in helping families use some of this wearable technology to track their families. And so there's two markets for Control Freak. One would be monitoring of like second homes, like Airbnb. So you can monitor. So like if somebody stays in your apartment, they can't flood the bathtub if they get drunk and leave the water running and flood the bathtub. That's so easily preventable if you have the right sensors set up. So what Geek Squad did for Wi-Fi and PCs, I see an even bigger market for sensors and monitoring of those sensors. That's the key. But also I want to help your parents and grandparents live in their own home and help you put off having them live in a nursing home by at least 5 to 10 years. Doesn't mean, you know, they might be able to live a little bit longer if they can, and you would monitor them. I wouldn't get the video signals. You would. I would set up the sensors, and I would watch the sensors so that you and your family are able to keep a watch. My mom is still alive today because she's living in my sister's home and not in a nursing home. And I think she's happier and she's getting fed better and taken care of better. And she was given 3 months to live 3 years ago. So I think sensors and wearable, right now all the wearables suck because they're built for healthy people like us to wear them and jog. But there's no wearables for my mom because my mom's wearable would have no lights or buttons. She doesn't even need to know. And I think the privacy implications, elderly, shift somewhat, you know, the trade-off for, hey, mom, you okay if like we all can like see the drop cam in the kitchen and the front door in case you like, think of the set of rules. You know, my mom should never wander outside the house during these hours. The temperature of the water in the hot water heater should never be above this temperature. If it is, the water should be cut off and I should get a text message. So think of how we could let people age in place. So those are two things I'm working on right now. And they're both service businesses. So. Anyway, it's 8:05. I don't want to keep you any longer. Thank you.